I come not to criticize, but to educate. If I have one task in this life, it's to inform as many people as possible about as much as possible. It's a tough job, but somebody has to do it. I'm Dr. Science. I don't have time to read what other scientists write, and although experiments are the very stuff of experimentation, they don't fit in with my way of doing things. No, data simply occur to me. I don't dream at night, I theorize. The truth is quite simply this. There are ways of answering questions even when you have no data at your disposal. It involves the use of disposable data, or neo-data, as it were. So listen to this tape and you'll have come a long way to your ultimate goal, to be more like me. With no further ado, let's go!
It's time once again to Ask Dr. Science. So let's ask Dr. Science.
That's me.
Remember, he knows more than you do.
That's right.
Jay North Bunker from Venice, California writes, Dear Dr. Science, what is the last thing to go through an insect's mind before it smashes into your car windshield?
By a remarkable coincidence, science has recently shed light on this problem. After a long and diligent search, science located a number of psychic insects. We duct-taped these telepathic six-legged creatures to the hood of a 62 Studebaker. Then we drove through Wyoming in August at 100 miles an hour. Tiny instruments picked up the final thoughts of the so-called normal insects as they smashed into the windshield. 23% of these final thoughts were, uh-oh. Another 25% were, oops, followed by 15%, which were simply, car. The remainder of these thoughts were a hodgepodge, including hungry, tired, whoa, big and shiny, and hey, watch where you're going.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Send your science questions to Ask Dr. Science. Remember, he's not a real doctor.
I have a master's degree.
In science.
That's right.
Elena Centaur from Minnetonka, Minnesota writes, Dear Dr. Science, if sound can't travel in a vacuum, how come vacuum cleaners make so much noise?
Vacuum cleaners are in themselves silent. What makes the noise you find so offensive are the actual particles of dirt and pollution in the space being cleaned. If your living room were clean when you vacuumed, then your vacuum cleaner would make no noise at all. The flaw in all this, of course, is that if your living room were clean, you wouldn't be vacuuming. Since there's no such thing as a perfectly clean living room in this less than best of all possible worlds, scientists had to prove this hypothesis by vacuuming in outer space, itself a perfect vacuum. Space is also incredibly clean. Astronauts reported that even the most powerful, poorly maintained vacuum cleaners made absolutely no noise in space. Millions of your tax dollars went towards proving this.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Than you do.
That's right.
Marvin Bell from Oakland, California writes, Dear Dr. Science, while rummaging through boxes in my attic, I found my high school math book. Skimming through it, I saw a chapter on imaginary numbers. For the life of me, I can't remember anything about them. What were they? Were they real?
Imaginary numbers were part of a Poetry in the Schools program launched to help us keep up with the Soviets. Seems that the Russian scientists were also great poets. When they weren't creating life in a test tube, they were straining a metaphor or bombarding a troublesome word with neutrinos to force rhyme in a stanza. We were simply outclassed. So we invented imaginary numbers as a way for our slide rule crowd to feel artistic. The program was abandoned in the late 60s when the country went crazy over drugs and rock music. By then, everything was imaginary anyway.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Send your science questions to Ask Dr. Science. Remember, he's not a real doctor.
I have a master's degree.
In science.
That's me.
Remember, he knows more than you do.
That's right.
Mr. Gates from Redmond, Washington writes, Dear Dr. Science, why did Silicon Valley become the center of the computer industry?
Contrary to popular belief, it had nothing to do with massive silicon deposits located just south of San Francisco. The huge LCD lake just north of San Jose had something to do with it, although that lake is invisible at the most oblique angles. By the way, blind trout swim in that lake, and I'm told they're quite tasty when poached, although I wouldn't know as I don't eat the flesh of blind animals. No, the computer industry got its start because of the large concentration of nerds who couldn't make it in the San Francisco fern bars. They drifted down towards the comparatively boring Santa Clara Valley in the hopes of having better luck with less competition. Still unlucky at love, they turned their energies towards hacking, and the rest is history.
Thank you, Dr. Science. You do?
That's right.
Willie Atwell from Oshkosh, Wisconsin writes, Dear Dr. Science, recently I was browsing through my local used bookstore and I saw an issue of Popular Science magazine dating from the early 50s. The front cover showed people flying around wearing rocket packs on their backs. Underneath the picture it said, Earth, 1990. Well, now it's 1991. Where are the jetpacks?
I have mine. What'd you do with yours? Maybe you weren't paying attention a few years back when Sears put them on sale. 30% off with 4 refill solid fuel boosters, and the afterburners were included. Buy 3, get a 4th for free. Yeah, I bought the whole lab crew their own. We spent a few days doing nothing more than zipping around the parking lot, banging our heads into walls and skinning our knees when it came time to land. So don't criticize progress if you can't take the time to read the ads that come with your local newspaper.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Knows more than you do.
That's right.
Lori Gordon from Windsor, Colorado writes, Dear Dr. Science, what are sperm banks? Do they pay interest?
No, but they do have drive-up windows and self-service teller machines. There are heavy penalties for early withdrawal, so be sure to check the terms of your deposit, as regulations vary from state to state. Many people who are fearful of sperm banks still keep their savings underneath the mattress, but these people are risking genetic damage from theft, fire, and gradual erosion from inflation. Since I'm neither a financial counselor nor a fertility expert, I must advise you to seek the advice of an expert in the field. But let me know how you're doing. Dr. Science cares.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Send your science questions to Ask Dr. Science. Remember, he's not a real doctor.
I have a master's degree.
He knows more than you do.
That's right.
Allison Yanero from Fairmont, West Virginia writes, Dear Dr. Science, why do men like the Three Stooges and women don't?
Check your data. I know of a large association of women who live and die for the Stooges. Their conventions are quite a sight. Imagine 1,000 grown women poking each other in the eyes, pulling each other's hair, yelling, "Certainly!" or "Mo Larry cheese!" When they do the Niagara Falls routine, it's conceptual art. An entire chorus of women chanting, "Slowly I turned, step by step, inch by inch." Oh, sure, there are more male Stooge fans, but that's just because the average Three Stooges episode appeals only to the left brain. In fact, I happen to know that in times of relative calm, they show Three Stooges films on the big screen in the war room at the Pentagon.
Thank you, Dr. Science.
That's right.
Big Bob Robertson from El Paso, Texas writes, Dear Dr. Science, what is that ringing sound I hear in my ears?
First of all, let me congratulate you for bringing this problem of yours to Dr. Science and not to a real doctor. The medical profession is helpless in the face of highly personal phenomenon such as you described. Science calls it the Quasimodo effect. It was first described as a high-pitched and offensively loud ringing of bells. But nowadays, sufferers describe the bell as a cheap modern telephone. Since this ringing can't be heard through a stethoscope, your average MD would probably prescribe a mild sedative, but only after running you through numerous expensive tests. I'll venture to say your ear canals are inhabited by demons, and you should see a certified exorcist immediately.
Thank you, Dr. Science. More than you do.
That's right.
Gordon Nagay from Berkeley, California writes, Dear Dr. Science, I recently drove from California to Colorado. My map shows California as pink, Nevada as orange, Utah as light green, and Colorado as lavender. As I drove, I failed to notice these colors. Why is that?
Chances are your car windshield is made of polarized glass. Back in 1973, when the energy crisis hit, there was a lot of pressure to cut down on needless gasoline consumption. Congress mandated that in order to make driving less fun, all automobile glass must be capable of filtering out the ambient colors of each state. It's a darn shame, too, because it cost a lot to paint each state its pastel hue. The WPA took care of that by air, from huge blimps, back in the 30s.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Send your science questions to Ask Dr. Science. Remember, he's not a real doctor.
I have a master's degree
in science.
Perhaps this would be a good time to raise your right hand and repeat after me the Dr. Science Pledge. I hereby swear, or affirm, to defend the right to disagree with those who disagree with Dr. Science and don't like him, and that I will proudly practice the principles he espouses for as long as I may live. Amen. There, you've done it. Now that little expert who's been hiding inside your head is free to stand buck naked in the cold winds of truth. Keep listening. You're going someplace. Someplace exciting, delightfully chilly, yet bathtub warm. Someplace where your IQ can run freely up and down the bell curve of systematic deviation.
It's time once again to Ask Dr. Science. So let's ask Dr. Science.
That's me.
Remember, he knows more than you do.
That's right.
Pamela Saputa from Logan, Utah wants to know, Dear Dr. Science, there's an entire science devoted to groundwater. How do they grind water, and how is it effectively marketed?
Groundwater is water that has gone through the turbines of a hydroelectric plant. Once this water is ground, it's useless for hydropower. This is why only one dam can be built on a river. After being ground, the only thing this water is good for is to make shaved ice to sell at county fairs. The so-called science of groundwater is actually the study of transport, how to get groundwater from the salt bog to the 7-Eleven. And it's also the study of flavoring. Groundwater will not accept naturally occurring flavors. So the 7-Eleven labs have developed orangium, colinum, and limonite, synthesized flavors that not only make groundwater edible, but provide jobs for hundreds of lab technicians.
Thank you, Dr. Science. He knows more than you do.
That's right.
Grace Harstad from Sioux City, Iowa writes, Dear Dr. Science, I know languages die, but what becomes of their remains?
They disintegrate into syllables, phonemes, and eventually guttural stops. It's possible to wipe out an entire language in less than a century. The English did it with Cornish back in the 19th century. Right now, many television shows are attempting to destroy the English language. Soap operas employ a vocabulary of only a few hundred words, and the actors spend at least a third of their time repeating each other's names. USA Today is coming out with an issue that's all pictures and graphs, augmented by only a few words, such as wow, yep, and huh? From a larger perspective, I suppose it's all just another example of entropy in action.
Thank you, Dr. Science. You do?
That's right.
Chuck Hodina from Kalamazoo, Michigan writes, Dear Dr. Science, every time I turn on my computer, someone named Ms. Doss boots something inside my computer. Who is this mystery woman?
Ms. Boot is a sadist living in ROM, or read-only memory. Your computer's a masochist, which needs to be booted up in order to get through the day. The little bits of information need to cluster together in groups of 8 in order to become usable. These group gropes are then called bytes. And who knows what else they do besides biting. There's a new computer magazine coming out, Hard Disk After Dark, which will uncover the latest developments in computing. Everyone knows that the future lies in multiple user technology. And look for the latest in personal computers, the Lady Chatterley, due any day now.
Thank you, Dr. Science. And you do?
That's right.
Letitia from Ann Arbor, Michigan writes, Dear Dr. Science, when you watch a foreign movie that has been dubbed, where do the original voices go?
They don't go anywhere. As you know, when you wake up foreigners in the middle of the night, they talk normal. So essentially, there are 2 versions of any foreign movie, one released in foreign gibberish, and one shot in the middle of the night after the foreigners have been rudely awakened. As a sop to liberals and people who think a thing has intrinsic value because it's French, the foreign language version is the one that's usually released, with subtitles so you can feel like you're reading at the movies, thus killing 2 pretentious birds with 1 stone. Don't be fooled. All of these movies are shot in New Jersey. Nobody really talks like that. It's all a sham, and foreign movie fans are just victims of a massive con game.
Thank you, Dr. Science. More than you do.
That's right.
Doug Crabtree from Andover, Massachusetts writes, Dear Dr. Science, why can't you divide by 0?
I can and often do divide by 0, but only after I've made the necessary preparations. First of all, I fast for 48 hours, consuming during that time only mildly fluoridated water. Next, I don my special Mylar Teflon Division by 0 suit. Then I put on a digitally recorded compact disc of Gregorian chants and begin with dividing very small numbers by other very small numbers. As the numbers get smaller, the sparks begin to fly. If all goes well, I take a deep breath and I divide by a very small number by 0. Well, there's a flash of light, a muffled roar. When I come to, the lab's filled with smoke and the scent of burning mylar. So you see, you can divide by 0 if you really want to, but chances are you just don't want to badly enough.
Thank you, Dr. Science. More than you do.
That's right.
Hot Whips Wancaster from Jersey City writes, Dear Dr. Science, why does my tongue stick to the ice cube tray?
Well, Hot Whips, next time you put the tray in the freezer, try filling it with water instead of your tongue. I think you'll find that your parties will be more fun, your drinks will be colder, and you won't have to talk to your guests in a voice like Elmer Fudd. As to the why of it, as I've stated before, under sub-zero temperatures, your tongue secretes a clear paste that bonds like superglue. Superglue was originally created by forcing small children to put their tongues on cold swing sets. So remember, dress your tongue warm. If you must put your tongue where it doesn't belong, make it a postage stamp. And never ever kiss if the temperature falls below 30 degrees. You're only opening yourself up to an embarrassing and potentially lethal social situation.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Send your science questions to Ask Dr. Science. Remember, he's not a real doctor.
I have a master's degree.
Science.
That's me.
Remember, he knows more than you do.
That's right.
Alex Olszewski from Cottage Grove, Minnesota writes, Dear Dr. Science, what do you consider to be the best insecticide for eliminating software bugs?
I use DDT. I don't know if you can buy it anymore, but we scientists still have drums of it left over from what I like to call the Our Friend the Atom days. Not that DDT had anything to do with atomic physics. No, it's simple chemistry, like hydrazine, the chemical handyman that does such a wide variety of chores. But getting back to software bugs, if you're afraid of getting dust in the hardware and you don't want poison gas corroding your new hard disk, try using one of those high-pitched ultrasonic screamers. To the human ear, they sound like nothing more than an annoying whine, but to a bug, they're an instant nervous breakdown. Leave it on overnight and the next morning shake your computer over the wastebasket. Chances are you'll fill it full of software bugs, which you can keep dormant in the freezer until you send them to your enemies, sprinkled generously on a floppy disk.
Thank you, Dr. Science. More than you do.
That's right.
R. Bowen from Royal Oak, Michigan writes, Dear Dr. Science, what goes through the minds of the smart bombs the last few seconds before they obliterate themselves? Do they resent us?
Of course they do. In fact, smart bombs are mainly composed of solidified resentment, a hard brown substance which the Germans called Schmerz, the French call ennui, and the Irish call life. Indeed, most smart bombs are manufactured in Ireland, where the resentment against the British that's built up over the centuries is finally put to good use. The smartest of smart bombs are the poets, who skillfully spin out beautiful verse during their free fall towards self-destruction. When they do explode, they do so as privately as possible to minimize damage to anyone but themselves. After purchasing them from the Irish, we modify them by removing their artistic sensibility, turning them into dumber, less sensitive performers. In short, into Americans.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Then you do.
That's right.
Rick Halbert from Fort Collins, Colorado writes, Dear Dr. Science, within a few weeks I hope to have received my doctorate in American Studies, culminating 10 years of higher education at a relatively prestigious state university. As the fateful day approaches, I find myself overwhelmed with a sense of impending doom. I can't help but wonder if I've wasted not only the last 10 years, but my life. Do you have any advice for me at this time?
I do, but you might not want to hear it. Cut your losses. Admit you've made some mistakes in the past and get on with your life. Your local community college or trade school probably offers a program in auto repair or restaurant management. They can help place their graduates in the job market. Cosmetology and TV repair are based on real-life needs of society. Face it, you've been had.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Send your science questions to Ask Dr. Science. Remember, he's not a real doctor.
I have a master's degree
in science. It's time once again to ask Dr. Science.
Rodney, what are you doing?
So let's ask Dr. Science.
Rodney, where's the music?
The music went on vacation. After 6 years, I guess it needed some time off.
Well, when's it coming back?
It didn't say. Soon enough. I said I'd fill in. Well, Dr. Science, our question is from Douglas Bell of Berkeley, California, who writes to ask, Dear Dr. Science, do whales pass gas?
What kind of question is that?
A real one. All our questions are real questions submitted by real listeners. Look, this one is on a university letterhead.
First the music goes, then the questions turn to mush. I guess this is what they call entropy in action.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Send your questions to Ask Dr. Science. Remember, he's not a real doctor.
I don't like this, Rodney. Not one bit.
You're supposed to say, I have a master's degree in science.
That's right.
Noe Venable from Ithaca, New York writes, Dear Dr. Science, who created braces?
Braces were actually invented during the Spanish Inquisition by a Jesuit priest, Father Ignatius Gorgonzola. He was trying to come up with a particularly effective torture device for heretics and blasphemers. Later, when the enemies of the church had all confessed and moved on to their final home, Father Gorgonzola had the braces plated in gold and stored in the basement of the Vatican. There they lay for hundreds of years until they were found by the late Walt Disney, as he searched for a suitable resting place for the large thermos bottle he'd be occupying for the next few centuries. When he saw the shiny collection of wires, the man who had given the world Mickey Mouse immediately thought of his old friend, Dr. E.B. Painless Parker, a dentist from Anaheim. Disney had the braces shipped to California, and the rest is orthodontic history.
Thank you, Dr. Science. And you do.
That's right.
Philip Mitchell and Susan King from Juneau, Alaska write, Dear Dr. Science, what is the function of a training bra? What does it train a young girl to do? Do boys have training athletic supporters? If not, why not?
The training bra was originally developed by the railroads to give conductors a place to store ticket stubs. On his day off, one conductor left his lying around the house, and his teenage daughter wore it to school as a joke. The rest is history. To answer your second question, despite the attraction of young men to hopping on boxcars and riding the rails, the railroads have never been big supporters of athletics. Maybe they wanted to leave that to the beer companies.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Send your science questions to Ask Dr. Science. Remember, he's not a real doctor.
I have a master's degree
In science.
As anyone with two brain cells that connect knows, the human brain is divided into 5 parts: the paramecium, the fornix, the inferior and pathetic lobes, and the tabloid, sometimes called the inquiring mind. This next group of questions and answers will stimulate each of those areas independently. Once awakened from their habitual slumber, a state euphemistically referred to as normal consciousness, your brain sectors will begin to quarrel. The result will be an inevitable but very necessary nervous breakdown. After the proper combination of medication and bed rest, your brain will awake refreshed. Your traumatic lesson in mental hygiene visible only as a haunted look about the eyes.
It's time once again to Ask Dr. Science. So let's ask Dr. Science.
That's me.
Remember, he knows more than you do.
That's right.
A harried parent from Highland Park, Illinois writes, Dear Dr. Science, I've listened to popular music all my life and really enjoyed folk, rock, jazz, and blues. I am mystified by one thing, and I hope science can help me. What is the appeal of rap music?
Rap music is an oxymoron. It's no more music than is the industrial noise of heavy metal. It is, rather, a more advanced way of annoying parents. Psychologists tell us that there's a specific work appropriate to each stage of human development. Children play, adults earn a living, and teenagers annoy their parents. Rap music was actually designed by a special computer program written by a sociopathic hacker who was already serving time in prison for computer crimes. It's been wildly successful in what it set out to do. Business and industry should be so lucky.
Thank you, Dr. Science. And you do.
That's right.
Mike Howell from Howell, Michigan writes, Dear Dr. Science, what is liquid paper really made out of?
You ever step on a snail and watch that white goo come out? Well, that doesn't have anything to do with what liquid paper's made of, but I wanted to make sure you were paying attention. Fact is, liquid paper's a fungus, a relative of slime mold. It's manufactured in library basements where book rot is collected as it drips from the moldy stacks upstairs. This effluvia is then shipped to Hong Kong, where it's mixed with various herbs, including Floribunda, nightbane, and Elmer's. It's then taken by junk to Minnesota, where it's bottled by bored college students with attitudes bigger than their earning potential. So the next time you buy a bottle, think of all that goes into it.
Thank you, Dr. Science. More than you do.
That's right.
D.B. Abdill from Colorado Springs writes, Dear Dr. Science, what is this substance guff I hear people refer to, and why don't they want any of it given to them?
This is guff. This is your brain on guff. Any questions? For your sake and the sake of your children, don't associate with strangers bearing guff. You never know where their guff has been. Of course, you can purchase pharmaceutical quality guff, but only with a special permit obtainable directly from the FDA. Last time I checked, they only gave out 2 a year, and that was to retired postal inspectors who were doing legitimate research into circulatory problems among sheep. No, if I were you, I'd leave guff to those constitutionally empowered to handle it. Sounds like you have enough problems right now.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Send your science questions to Ask Dr. Science. Remember, he's not a real doctor.
I have a master's degree.
In science. Remember, he knows more than you do.
That's right.
Jay Major from Missoula, Montana writes, Dear Dr. Science, what can you tell me about Rocky Mountain barking spiders? My cabin is overrun with them. What can I do?
I doubt if you have them. Rocky Mountain barking spiders are extremely rare. Check again. Count the legs. If they only have 4 legs, chances are you have malamutes, which bear a remarkable resemblance to Rocky Mountain barking spiders, except they're shorter and aren't poisonous. If they have 8 legs, you could be hallucinating. Check for drugs in your bloodstream, or for symptoms of cabin fever. If you do indeed have Rocky Mountain barking spiders, I suggest you move. There's no way to get rid of them. While normally they're quite friendly, people who ask silly questions of radio experts drive them into an insane, murderous rage. Good luck, and I hope it's not too late.
Thank you, Dr. Science.
That's right.
Dear Dr. Science, writes John McGill from Oak Park, Michigan, if fish live in schools and wolves live in packs, what do humans live in?
Nowadays, most humans live in apartment complexes. Some of these apartment complexes have their own character, such as the clothing optional complexes one hears about in Southern California. Members of the Wild Kingdom would be hard-pressed to duplicate the wild times these indoor nudists have in their shag-carpeted pleasure domes. Both humans and animals form their respective communities out of fear, I guess, as in most intimate contact. I've always lived alone. Each of my ex-wives tried but failed to get me to cohabitate. A scientist doesn't have time to get involved with schools or packs or marriage.
Thank you, Dr. Science.
And you do? That's right.
Dom Franco from Indiana, Pennsylvania writes, Dear Dr. Science, which is more important, longitude or latitude?
Neither is as important as attitude. That barometer of emotional health and sonar for the great dark forces that lurk beneath the level of consciousness. Yes, the ship of your life can be right on course, having constantly referred to both astrolabe and sextant, and still you can find yourself sunk by a whiny gimme attitude. How many captains have stood inebriated at the poop deck, smarting from some imagined injustice, while the tanker ran aground on the shoals of daily living? Yes, it helps to know where you are, but the question of where you're coming from sometimes means much, much more.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Send your science questions to Ask Dr. Science. Remember, he's not a real doctor.
I have a master's degree.
In science. It's time once again to Ask Dr. Science. So let's ask Dr. Science.
That's me.
Remember, he knows more than you do.
That's right.
John Gibson from Cedar Rapids, Iowa writes, Dear Dr. Science, I hired a genealogist to see if I was descended from the apes, but all he told me about were my forebears. What do 4 bears have to do with apes? What's he talking about? Dr. Science. Hey, where's Dr. Science?
Rodney, come here. I want you.
I can hear him, sort of.
Over here, Rodney. The phone.
Dr. Science, what are you doing on the phone? We're recording the radio program.
Rodney, they've got me.
Who's got you?
My enemies. They've got me and they won't let me go until you pay the ransom. You're my only hope, Rodney. My only hope.
Thank you, Dr. Science. More than you do.
That's right.
Dr. Science has been kidnapped by mysterious and nefarious forces. He's on the telephone. Just who are these people, Dr. Science?
They call themselves the Coalition of Humorless University Professors. They say they'll hold me here until they receive $150,000 in small bills.
$150,000?
That's right.
There's not that much money in the whole public radio system.
Don't I know it? We have to raise that money, Rodney. They threaten torture.
Well, that's not right. Besides, you know how low your threshold for pain is.
Oh, yeah. Rodney, come on. You can do it. Plead with our listeners. Make them understand. Oh, no. Here they come.
Thank you, Dr. Science. And you do.
That's right.
Dr. Science is being held prisoner by a group of overly sensitive educators. They won't let him go unless we come up with a ransom. And they're threatening torture.
Threatening my eye. They're practicing it. Oh, here it comes again. I can't take it. Oh, no. What's worse, Rodney, they make me read the poems of Rod McEwen. I don't think I can take any more of this.
Dr. Science, hold on to your sanity. Help is on the way. Already our listeners are sending in contributions. Why, just this morning, the 7th grade science class at Horace Mann Junior High sent their lunch money.
Oh, no, Rodney, this is impossible. Help!
Thank you, Dr. Science. He knows more than you do.
That's right.
Dr. Science is being held hostage by a group of humorless university professors. But fans of the Ask Dr. Science show are providing the ransom money. In a heartwarming response, young and old are sending what they can. We expect to reach our $150,000 goal any day now.
Rodney, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, Dr. Science. Are you all right?
They've stopped playing Pachelbel's canon. I read all of Rod McEwen. All of his poems, every single one of them.
Oh, hang in there, Dr. Science. We've almost got the ransom money.
Really?
Yeah.
I knew you could do it, Rodney. I knew it.
Thank you, Dr. Science.
That's right.
Dr. Science has been kidnapped by a group that calls itself the Coalition of Humorless University Professors. They've been torturing Dr. Science, but they've stopped now. And thanks to you, the fans of the Ask Dr. Science show, we've managed to raise the ransom money, so as soon as we can figure out where to mail it... Dr. Science, you're back.
Oh, yeah, Rodney, I am. Safe and sound.
Did they just let you go?
No, I let myself go. I took advantage of the immense amount of empty space that exists between the nucleus and the electron shell of each and every atom, using Kundalini yoga techniques that are much too complicated to describe here.
Golly, that's great.
I'm glad to see you think so.
I guess now we'll have to send back the $150,000 in ransom money.
Don't be hasty, Rodney. I'm sure we'll find a use for it here in the lab.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Send your science questions to Ask Dr. Science. Remember, he's not a real doctor.
I have a master's degree.
In science.
This next set of questions were some of the hardest I've ever faced. Only my years as a laboratory assistant for Nikola Tesla had prepared me for the illogical leaps necessary to handle the Boolean algebra required. But answer them I did, and you'll hear the results for yourself.
It's time once again to Ask Dr. Science. So let's ask Dr. Science.
That's me.
Remember, he knows more than you do.
That's right.
Shane Erickson from Long Beach, California writes, Dear Dr. Science, why do people have collections of stuffed animals in the back window of their cars?
You might remember a few years back when St. Christopher was decanonized by the Catholic Church. Statues of the likable big lug carrying the divine baby on his back were confiscated in the dead of night by papal authorities. Even today, many drivers complain their cars feel empty, as if they were missing a friendly companion. Well, one day, a Latin American Jesuit, Father Juan Valdez, proposed canonizing a mixture of cats and dogs and cute little panda bears to fill the sacramental void. The idea took hold immediately. In Ireland, where St. Patrick suffered similar treatment, they solved that problem by putting little pictures of Elvis and JFK everywhere. Whatever works.
Thank you, Dr. Science. He knows more than you do.
That's right.
Mary Beth Norris from Lafayette, Indiana writes, Dear Dr. Science, if I can fax a document across the world, why can't I fax a parcel? Or even myself?
You can, but it really, really hurts. You must also have a dedicated phone line to fax a living object and still have it be alive at the other end. I have a fiber optic cable about 3 feet in diameter, and after once testing the system by faxing myself around the globe 10 times, I suffered only minor fax lag. But when I think of all the money I save in plane fares, the discomfort's well worth it. The real pain comes when you're first sucked into the system. You know that annoying warbling tone that happens at the start of a fax? Well, that's the sound of the fax chompers, reducing the document to bits and bytes of information. Fortunately, that only takes less than a minute, even for a 300-pounder such as myself. Yeah, it's at times like that I mentally go through the tables of natural logarithms, just to distract myself. That and plenty of ibuprofen make it bearable.
Thank you, Dr. Science. More than you do.
That's right.
Barley Moffat from Chillicothe, Missouri writes, Dear Dr. Science, have you ever met George Bush?
Just once in Paris. I think it was the fall of '80. October, if I recall correctly. We were having dinner with some Iranian businessmen. I can't remember what we discussed at dinner. George was running for vice president then, a position now held by Dan Quayle, NASA's head cheerleader. I was there to give George some technical advice on radioactive decay rates or some such nonsense. And every time I tried to get his attention, he would propose a toast to the eternal friendship between our two countries. He laughed, the Iranians frowned, and I mumbled something about the half-life of plutonium. I had veal scallopini, which was very, very good. Of course, it should have been at those prices.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Send your science questions to Ask Dr. Science. Remember, he's not a real doctor.
I have a master's degree in... That's me.
Remember, he knows more than you do.
That's right.
Edward Lear from Jamestown, California writes, Dear Dr. Science, what happened to all the 8-track tapes?
I still have mine. What did you do with yours? Science can't help you take care of your personal belongings. It can, however, suggest new uses for old technology. I've used my 8-track tape machine to manufacture durable and stylish clothing. I simply take my old socks and insert them into the slot, followed by any old 8-track cartridge. Then I let the machine run through its cycle. When it's played all 8 tracks of distorted music, I withdraw the cartridge and usually find a new shirt or pair of trousers. It's just another example of the kind of thing we scientists turn up through random experimentation.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Then you do.
That's right.
Jeff Shields from Haines, Alaska writes, Dear Dr. Science, how do porcupines mate?
Very carefully. No, seriously, porcupines, the so-called pincushions of the wild, reproduce through a unique process called procreation. They use their paws to pluck one another's quills and plant them firmly in the ground. If the quills haven't been stolen by raccoons, the so-called bandits of the woods, after 6 months gestation, the quills are plucked from the ground by opossums, the so-called garbage mouths of the Midwest. Then the opossums are kidnapped at gunpoint by the mommy and daddy porcupines and forced to donate their pouches to the suckling porcupines. At the end of the weaning process, the fully grown porcupines are surgically removed by rabbits, the so-called surgeons of the forest. So you see, nature is more complicated than we think.
Thank you, Dr. Science.
That's right.
Ray Mullen from North Liberty, Iowa writes, Dear Dr. Science, if curiosity killed the cat, why doesn't it have any effect on college students?
There are only a few pathways into the mind of the average college student, and these are clogged with beer nuts and suntan oil. I'm not talking about the ear canals, because these are usually open if the outer ear isn't covered with a Walkman headphone. One study tried gaining access to the average college student's mind by putting subliminal messages onto rock cassette tapes. But it was found that no matter what the message content was, the resulting behavior change always involved either pizza or beer consumption. This scientist can only assume that cats are simply too sensitive, if not too intelligent, to go to college.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Send your science questions to Ask Dr. Science. Remember, he's not a real doctor.
I have a master's degree
In science. Remember, he knows more than you do.
That's right.
Baffled in the wine country writes, Dear Dr. Science, why is the speed of light only 186,000 miles per second? Surely science can do better than this.
Yes, you're right. It is a disgrace that light only goes a measly 186,000 miles per second. But physicists are working on this problem. There is already a prototype vehicle that goes 200,000 miles per second, but the headlights only shine at 186,000 miles per second. This is equivalent to driving down the freeway the wrong way with your headlights not only out, but actually chasing you down the road. This is why so many scientists today no longer own a driver's license.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Remember, he knows more than you do.
That's right.
Befuddled in Winnetka wants to know, Dear Dr. Science, my question is about escalators. What happens when the basement gets full of stairs?
Escalators are large, ungainly, somewhat stupid reptiles whose natural habitat is between the floors of department stores and shopping malls. When escalators slither into the basement, they crawl around in the dark for a while and eventually die of starvation, unless they're rescued by the sadly understaffed escalator patrol. The escalators thus rescued become dumbwaiters, people movers, conveyor belts, and luggage carousels at airports. The dead escalators are coated with a stiffener and put back to work. That's right, stairs are dead escalators.
Thank you, Dr. Science. He knows more than you do.
That's right.
Constant reader in Clearinghouse, Massachusetts wants to know, Dear Dr. Science, why do magazines all have those little cards that fall on the floor when you open the magazine?
The publishers of magazines have no concern for the little guy or gal. They want you to think you can only get magazines by subscription or at newsstands. This is simply not true. Those cards are magazine babies, or seeds. Plant them, nurture them, and in 6 weeks you'll have a ripe TV Guide or Reader's Digest. In 2 months you'll have a Time or a Newsweek. After 6 months, a mature Playboy, Esquire, or Vanity Fair. You must water them carefully, however, or you could end up with a small-town newspaper or the notes from your high school literature class. And if you leave them in the ground too long, you'll end up with a novel by Dostoevsky in Russian. Happy gardening, and thanks for asking.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Send your science questions to Ask Dr. Science. Remember, he's not a real doctor.
I have a master's degree
In science.
By now you should feel a tenderness above the eyes, similar to the post-operative trauma from a traditional lobotomy. Rest assured that this has been no traditional procedure, but rather a new sort of metamorphosis, a transformation, a mutation, if you will, of your original mental hardware. Your off-the-shelf floppy drive has been replaced by a new high-density, double-sided, harder-than-hard drive. Let's test that baby, shall we? Listen to this next batch of listener ignorance, and then let's see how that new system handles it.
It's time once again to Ask Dr. Science. So let's ask Dr. Science.
That's me.
Remember, he knows more than you do.
That's right.
Carol Janicek from Brooklyn, New York writes, Dear Dr. Science, how many pins fit on the head of an angel?
Avogadro's number. That's 6-point-something times 10 to the 23rd, I believe. Avogadro was both a scientist and a bishop of the Holy Roman Empire. He and Thomas Aquinas captured Visigoths and made them dress as any one of the 9 choirs of angels. The didactic duo then drove crude pins, or spikes as we would call them today, into the skulls of the unlucky barbarians. When they had driven as many spikes as the spike maker Avogadro could supply them with, they declared the experiment complete. While moles devoured the Visigoths, they counted up the spikes and arrived at Avogadro's number. Modern-day scientists celebrate this historic event by implanting electrodes into the brains of chimpanzees, but the world has changed much since the Dark Ages. Now we find scientists attacked by anti-vivisectionists, just as the civilized world was attacked by the barbarian hordes. I suppose there's some sort of poetic justice in all this, but if so, it eludes me.
Thank you, Dr. Science. More than you do.
That's right.
James Gilbert from Prescott, Arizona writes, Dear Dr. Science, Where do germs come from? Where do they go?
Germs come from New York City. They go to Los Angeles. Most germs travel by air, but the more dangerous germs are carried by Greyhound and Trailways. Most germs are romantics, enjoying soft music in warm, dimly lit places. Alone, they're harmless enough, but in groups, they tend to get too rowdy and can party so hard they kill their host. Contrary to popular belief, metropolitan areas aren't the only places with germs. Many decide they're tired of the infected rat race of the city and go out to the country, lie about their past, and get jobs as yeast. So the next time you make the mistake of biting into a piece of bread, get a tetanus shot immediately.
Thank you, Dr. Science. He knows more than you do.
That's right.
Dear Dr. Science, writes Teresa from Orangevale, New Jersey, do good dogs go to heaven?
There is a doggy heaven and a doggy hell, but goodness doesn't determine where a dog's final destination lies. According to the writings of the Middle Ages canine theologian Augustine, or Augie Doggy, goodness does not determine salvation. It is rather the result of predestination. This Calvinist theory suggests that a nasty yapping rug like a Yorkshire Terrier could wear a halo, while a lovable, goofy Irish setter could burn in the fires of eternal damnation. Sure, it's unfair, but on the other hand, there's no such thing as a really good dog. If you want a pet that won't shed or be cast into a lake of unquenchable fire, get a goldfish.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Send your science questions to Ask Dr. Science. Remember, he's not a real doctor.
I have a master's degree.
In science. Ask Dr. Science.
That's me.
Remember, he knows more than you do.
That's right.
Nita Alizada, age 9, from Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, writes, Dear Dr. Science, how come in tires and trucks they only have a spare tire? Why not a spare everything? Oh, P.S. Is there a spare Dr. Science?
Good question. The fact is that both European and Japanese auto manufacturers do equip their vehicles with spare tires, transmissions, even engines. These are stolen before the cars reach the States. For some odd reason, the thieves only steal 3 of the 4 spare tires, and that's why we generally have 1 on cars sold here. As to your question about a spare Dr. Science, yes, there is one. Right now, he's a 9-year-old, one of a family of 16, living in a paper shack on the edge of Sao Paulo, Brazil. Fate will propel him towards the microphone in its good time. No use rushing these things. Not as long as my vocal cords still produce an unctuous baritone.
Thank you, Dr. Science. He knows more than you do.
That's right.
Dr. Herkimer Cruikshank from Brighton, Michigan writes, Dear Dr. Science, when recent reports told of nuclear fusion having been accomplished at room temperature, we found ourselves pondering the undeniable question, where was Dr. Science?
I was here in my lab, poring over your collected ignorance. Fact is, I accomplished cold fusion as an undergraduate. Did it by accident. I was trying to come up with a non-spoilable mayonnaise. I had some heavy water, egg whites, vinegar, and lemon juice, as I recall. A car battery I had wired to 2 spoons, and I just added some salt to the mixture when it suddenly fused together in one big glob. There was a tremendous release of energy of all kinds, and it smelled bad, too. When I regained consciousness, I had nobody offering me the Nobel Prize. Just a big mess to clean up. But then I didn't have the entire state of Utah acting as a PR machine.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Than you do.
That's right.
Dan Satterberg from Neosho, Missouri writes, Dear Dr. Science, the opening line of our beloved Star Spangled Banner is O Say Can You See by the Don Zerly Light. Who is Don Zerly?
Don Zerly was a cousin of Richard Stans. You may recall Rich. He was the founder of our republic commemorated in the Pledge of Allegiance. And to the Republic for Richard Stans. Mr. Zerly and Stans were the actual authors of the Declaration of Independence. Being Canadian citizens, they sold their work to Thomas Jefferson, who himself was a Jamaican. One of Jefferson's many inventions was the reggae beat, which he named after his chauffeur, Reggie. The Star Spangled Banner was actually the first reggae tune, but that's another story.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Send your science questions to Ask Dr. Science. Remember, he's not a real doctor.
I have a master's degree.
In science. Bum, 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 bum.
Rodney, what the heck are you doing?
It's time once again to Ask Dr. Science. Bum, 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 bum.
Rodney, do you need professional help?
So let's ask Dr. Science. Ba, 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 ba.
That's me.
I'm right here, Rod. Here to help if you just let me know what the problem is.
Dr. Science, this is just my way of letting you and the listeners know that this is our 2001st episode of the Ask Dr. Science show.
No.
Yes, we've given the world over 2,000 infotainment nuggets of truth, wisdom, and your highly opinionated opinions about a wide variety of matters.
I have, haven't I? Well, it's been a long haul. Somebody had to do it. 2001 episodes shot into the ether.
Think of it, Dr. Science. Our first episodes are now over 3 light years past Alpha Centauri.
What do you think they make of the show?
I imagine opinion is divided the same way it is here on Earth.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. Rodney, let me take this opportunity to thank you for all your help.
Oh, no, thank you, Dr. Science.
No, I want to thank you, Rodney. Without your patient and persistent...
The credit is all yours, Dr. Science.
Look, Rodney, I'm the big kahunga here, and I say...
Thank you, Dr. Science. More than you do.
That's right.
Maurice Ravel from Cleveland, Ohio writes, Dear Dr. Science, how does a three-way light bulb work?
The three-way light bulb was invented in France, where it's called the ménage à bulbe. The brightest settings used during the workday when things need to be sharply defined. The middle settings for the lunch hour, when the workers relax with wine, cheese, and that flirtatious innuendo the French call double entendre. The dimmest settings for after work, when the workers form committees of 3 or more to brainstorm on ways to solve problems that have resisted the harsh light of day. You know, they say that a three-way bulb rarely burns out, but when they do, they go with a bang.
Thank you, Dr. Science.
That's me.
Remember, he knows more than you do.
That's right.
Jesse M. Zahn from Plattsburgh, New York writes, Dear Dr. Science, if it rains in a rainforest, what does it do in a petrified forest?
I'm appalled by your ignorance. Your question betrays a lack of comprehension for even the most basic facts of natural life. Any third grader knows the process of petrification is what's going on in a petrified forest. What does petrification sound like, look like, feel like? You ask with your beclouded brain. Well, sir, imagine yourself strapped to a hospital bed, watching MTV and wearing headphones attached to a tape player that's playing an endless loop of Pachelbel's Canon. First you get bored, then you get mad, then you get rigid.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Send your science questions to Ask Dr. Science. Remember, he's not a real doctor. So let's ask Dr. Science.
That's me.
Remember, he knows more than you do.
That's right.
Marianne Martin from Eugene, Oregon sends this question with love. Dear Dr. Science, who is the smartest person in the whole world?
It's a toss-up between Willard Scott and Dr. Joyce Brothers. Willard has the most rigorously disciplined mind I've had the pleasure to observe. To watch the man in action, morning after morning, creating seamless transitions from unrelated item to item, all the while maintaining the illusion of effortless good cheer and mindless optimism, well, I can't say enough about the man. But then you have Dr. Brothers, the Hugh Downs of modern psychology. 1 part Ann Landers and 3 parts Werner von Braun. You know what I'm trying to say here? Snoopy meets Linus Pauling. Am I making myself clear? Words fail me. I watch them both all the time. Enough said.
Thank you, Dr. Science.
Then you do. That's right.
Dear Dr. Science, writes Bob Seifert from Glendale, Arizona, is the amoeba really the lowest form of life?
No, the lawyer is the lowest form of life. Belonging to the species Councilus parasitus, they're recognized by their cry, "We'll sue, we'll sue." They have few natural enemies, and if it weren't for the fact that they are cannibalistic, the country would already be overrun with lawyers. Of their mating habits, well, one lawyer builds a nest out of heaps of paper and chirps "merger, merger," hoping to attract another lawyer in a passing BMW. If one stops, they do a dance, grunting "party the first part," then shed their jackets, have a cigarette, and take 10% of everything in sight. Then they leave. They don't lay eggs, yet every day there are more lawyers. It's just one of nature's ugly mysteries.
Thank you, Dr. Science.
Then you do. That's right.
Christine Jones from Chewella, Washington writes, Dear Dr. Science, why is a generally responsible and stable person like myself obsessed each morning with listening to anything as fatuous as Dr. Science?
First of all, let me thank you for the compliment. My edition of the Scientist's First Dictionary of Non-Scientific Things Like Language tells me that fatuous means the product of a noble mind. Yeah, I like to think my mind's first of all noble, then thrifty, cheerful, kind. As to why you find yourself obsessed with the Ask Dr. Science show, gee, I wish I could help, but I'm as far from a psychologist as you can find. My personal experience with obsessive behavior is limited to a deep fixation I had at the age of 13 with induction coils. A few years later, I had a thing for 5U4 rectifier tubes, but that only lasted a few weeks. So the only encouragement I can offer you is, you'll probably grow out of it. And if you don't, well, be thankful I'm not a TV evangelist.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Send your science questions to Ask Dr. Science. Let's ask Dr. Science.
That's me.
Remember, he knows more than you do.
That's right.
Dear Dr. Science, writes Bill Burton from Vienna, Virginia, what exactly is secular humanism?
Secular humanism is a philosophy that refuses to acknowledge the debt society owes science for progress. Most attracted to this philosophy are scientists wannabe, dabbling in the Bush League demi-disciplines of library or political science. Scientists may or may not be members of an organized religion, but no scientist can be a secular humanist. In fact, this scientist is as unjudgmental as a Unitarian on a Sunday picnic when he says that it would be fitting and just for all secular humanists to be stuck at the receiving end of a linear accelerator and be given a copy of Mother Jones to swat neutrinos with.
Thank you, Dr. Science. He knows more than you do.
That's right.
Well, Dr. Science, here's a damp postcard postmarked Oakland, signed hung over in East Bay, in which is written, Dear Dr. Science, what does the tongue do while we sleep?
The tongue is an energetic piece of flesh that often seems to have a life of its own. When it's not wagging, it's dodging the teeth to keep from being bitten. You'd think that with all this energetic work, at the end of the day, the tongue would need a rest. But when the lights go out, our friend the tongue actually leaves the mouth, hops out of bed, climbs out the window, and joins the tongues of other sleepers in a rooftop party. There's dancing, drinking, even French kissing. Meanwhile, our sleeping bodies are snoring, a sound the mouth makes when it is tongueless. So if you're bothered by someone snoring, don't blame the sleeper. Blame the errant, wandering rogue of a tongue who will return just before dawn, coated, fuzzy, but happy.
Thank you, Dr. Science. Send your science questions to Ask Dr. Science. Remember, he's not a real doctor.
I have a master's degree
In science.
You're about to hear a radio play, recorded in special binaural digital database using trained actors in a unique anechoic chamber hidden deep in the Swiss Alps. This play rips the lid off many modern preconceptions about the conspiracy between the International Communist Party, the International House of Pancakes, and the Vatican. It's almost half an hour long, so it's going to take some attention. You do have an attention span that long, don't you?
Duck's Breath Homemade Playhouse is on the air.
What would happen if the world were invaded not by alien monsters, but by a popular consumer product? And how would the self-proclaimed authority, Dr. Science, react to such an invasion? Join us now as this hypothetical question becomes all too real, as Dr. Science meets the sea monkeys from hell.
Now, if this thing works, the Nobel Prize is mine. Back to the drawing board.
Dr. Science, look what I found. Somebody dumped it in the yard.
No doubt it beats what I found by a country mile.
A compact disc. The yard's so full of them, it's shiny.
But we don't have a compact disc player, Rodney. You know that.
I know, but still, what kind of jerk would dump a whole load of compact discs all over Research Park? Why don't they just take their CDs to the landfill like everybody else?
Probably some sort of tax write-off.
Each disc has a smile face on it. I thought the smile face went out of style years ago.
It did. Long before the advent of the compact disc player. I wonder what's on these things.
Well, I guess we need a compact disc player to find out. But no, as long as that old Brunswick changer of yours holds out, we'll play your 78s until the needle rusts.
Now, don't worry, Rodney. We can construct a makeshift compact disc player out of this centrifuge here and this laser. We simply have to have the reflected beam signaled onto the audio amplifier right over there. There. Now let's see what secrets this mystery disc holds.
Clouds and trees and swimming holes, ice cream bars and wiggling toes, nice big bunnies that hop and roll. Have a nice day. Dum-de-dum-de-daddy-da-da.
catchy. Music and lyrics by the Foreigners. This cut seems to be called Have a Nice Day. Hey, I like this song a lot.
You do?
Have a nice day. That's a great concept.
Rodney, there's something strange happening here. A few minutes ago, you were your usual grumpy self, but now you snap into a good mood for no apparent reason.
Dr. Science, I have to take a sabbatical so I can spend a lot more time listening to this music. And not working. Bye.
Bye, Rodney. I think there's more to this disc than meets the ear. I'm going to do something I haven't done in 10 years. I'm going for a walk.
Dr. Science was not alone in his curiosity about the strange discs. In another part of the scientific community, his female counterpart, a Dr. Julie Freiberg, was probing the mystery of the discs from heaven.
Denny, come here. I want you.
Coming, Dr. Freiberg.
Denny, I've spilled some iridium on my smock. Could you martinize it for me?
Oh, all right, Dr. Freiberg.
Please, Denny, call me Julie.
Well, fine, if that's what you like. But I have to warn you, it's not going to be easy for me to remember. Every job I've ever had, they want you to be sure and call them by their proper titles. Mr. Jones, Dr. Anderson, Mr. Brown. Oh, there. It's not glowing anymore.
So you've worked for a lot of scientists.
No, this is a first for me. Usually I'm a receptionist and a part-time word processor.
Denny, as long as you're here, maybe you could help me.
Sure.
What do you make of these discs?
Ooh, anything with a smile face on it is tray go.
Kind of like a black velvet painting of a big-eyed kid.
Or a sad clown with a tear on his cheek.
Listen to this music.
Clouds and trees and swimming holes, ice cream bars and wiggling toes, nice big bunnies that hop and roll. Have a nice day.
Sounds like something I've heard before.
Denny, I have a hunch that these are more than they appear to be. Have you heard of backward masking?
Oh, yes. Tipper Gore talks about it in her new book. It's not as good as her other two books, but
Yes,
still...
well, there may be some sort of subliminal seduction going on here. I think we ought to take these discs to Dr. Science and see what he thinks.
Tipper would agree.
Meanwhile, Dr. Science wanders through the city trying to find an explanation for the mysterious discs.
Excuse me, sir, could I ask you... excuse me, ma'am, could you help me... Boy, I've got to find someone who can analyze this data. Say, who's that intelligent and good-looking woman walking my way?
Dr. Science, you're just the person I've been looking for.
She knows me.
I'm Dr. Julie Freiberg from the National Academy of Intuitive Phrenology.
You're one of those right-brainers.
I suppose you could call us that.
I read your monograph on subliminal conditioning. Pure hogwash.
I'm flattered you read it at all. I read yours on seminal brain transplants. Absolute nonsense.
Why, thank you.
I was coming to see you about these compact discs.
You know, I was thinking of consulting you about the very same thing.
Well, then what a coincidence. Shall we go somewhere to talk?
My lab or yours?
How about this restaurant? Here.
Hello, my name is Rufus. I'll be your waiter for today. Our specials are listed on the chalkboard above the bar. Can you see that? They're each $9.95, except for the shrimp a la Victor, which is obviously out of your price range. Our wine of the day is Chateau Illinois, and our house coffee is a full-bodied Colombian, delicately flavored with cinnamon and nutmeg.
I'll just have water, thank you.
Won't you eat something?
No, I gave up eating years ago. Replaced it with daily vitamin injections and a handful of enzyme pills. I'd drink some coffee if they hadn't adulterated it with sugar and spice.
They might have some regular coffee.
I doubt it. Once a place goes over to Wimp Coffee, there's no turning back.
I should tell you now that we don't accept checks or credit cards or cash.
I'll just have water, too.
All right, I'll bring you some napkins in case you spill it.
You know, that guy has an attitude problem. I mean, this tablecloth seems plenty absorbent. I don't know.
Forget him. I think these discs are the product of some sinister force.
What makes you say that?
I've done some preliminary analysis on the discs, and my hunch is that there's some kind... Wait a minute, did you hear that?
Hear what?
The background music.
Have a nice day. It's already made it to Muzak. Boy, they don't waste any time cannibalizing popular culture, do they?
There's something insidious in all this.
Hello, beautiful people. Rufus here with your water and shrimp a la Victor on the house.
We're not really hungry, Rufus. We just came here to talk.
That's beautiful. People should talk more and eat less. Then there'd be more sharing and less pigginess.
If you need the table, we'll be glad to leave.
It's just as much your table as it is mine. Enjoy!
Do you see what I mean? First the music started, and now the waiter acts like he has tofu for brains.
Maybe you already had tofu for brains.
Look out the window. Everybody's happy. The whole city is changing, probably the whole world. Dr. Science, we've got to do something.
But first of all, we have to figure out why you and I seem to be immune from this tofuization.
Are we?
Is the world in danger? Are the happy-face compact discs destroying our minds? Who are the foreigners? And what is Denny doing right now?
I wonder what's taking Julie so long. I'm so lost without her to give me direction. So bored. So alone. Well, I can always listen to that compact disc by the Foreigners again. When I do, it makes me feel different. Makes me feel like I did when I was a kid. All squishy inside, like I'd eaten a whole bunch of water balloons. I wonder who that could be. Whoever it is, they probably want to talk to Dr. Freiberg, not to me. But that's okay. She has a PhD in neurolinguistic holistic programming. And I dropped out of pre-library science because I couldn't handle the math. Who would have guessed the Dewey Decimal and Library of Congress systems were all numbers? But somehow with this music playing, it doesn't bother me anymore. Oh well, guess I better answer the phone. Hello, Dr. Freiberg's laboratory, Denny speaking.
Denny, how are you?
I feel great, Julie, which is weird since my life has been a total waste.
What makes you say that?
It has, hasn't it? I mean, who'd care if I turned into a sea monkey tomorrow?
I would. What made you talk about sea monkeys?
I don't know. Just popped into my head, I guess. When are you coming back to the lab, Julie?
I'm having lunch with Dr. Science right now.
I thought he never ate anything.
We're just having water. Denny, I think we're onto something. It's important you not listen to those discs anymore. Do you understand me?
But it's my favorite song. It's all I have. I don't have a life. I don't have any friends. Please let me listen to the disc, Julie,
Stop
please.
whining.
Yes, ma'am.
Don't listen to that compact disc anymore. I'll explain it all when I get back. Do you understand?
I understand we should all have a happy day. Every day. Sunshine and roses, not clouds and weeds. Smile. Enjoy.
Just
Smile.
hold on till we get there,
Enjoy.
Denny.
Smile. Julie, help me.
I hope you don't mind, but I drank your water while you were gone.
They've got Denny, too.
I'm sorry to hear that. Who's Denny?
My research assistant.
Oh, Rodney's my RA. They can have him too if they want.
Please, don't joke. We've got to help him. He sounded awful, and he said the strangest thing about sea monkeys.
I had them when I was a kid. They're truly frightening under a microscope. What do you say we take this disc to the lab?
My lab or yours?
Neither. To the scientific laboratory of the National Scientific Institute of Science in Washington, D.C.
And so the two intrepid researchers flew to our nation's capital to avail themselves of the best scientific machinery and minds the world has to offer.
Can I help you?
We'd like to use the giant radial sphygmopregmometer.
Sign in.
Isn't this the only machine of its kind?
They have a crude imitation in the Soviet Union, but it's twice as big and works half as well.
Down the stairs to the left. Turn it off when you're through.
Isn't it amazing they just let you use this thing?
It's our right as citizens.
It's so large.
A machine as big as an office building.
Did you bring the disc?
I thought you were going to bring it.
You mean we came all this way and we didn't even...
Just joking, here it is.
Well, this must be how you turn it on.
Okay, let's stick that disc in and see what we can see.
Just what you'd expect.
Ordinary aluminum crystalline structure.
Now let's try ourselves.
No, Julie, don't stick your head in there!
Why not? It's just a low-energy neutrino beam.
Yes, but your head... What did it feel like?
Kind of like sticking your finger in a fan, only it's your head.
Look at that CRT readout. You have almost no left brain.
Since I rely on intuition for almost all my work, I don't use my left brain, and now it's nearly dormant.
Let me stick my head in there.
You have almost no right brain.
It atrophied from lack of use and eventually fell out of my ear. Here it is. I carry it around in my pocket. It's nearly fossilized.
It looks like a shelled walnut.
Well, all this is fascinating, but it isn't getting us any closer to finding out what's up with these discs.
What if we were to play the disc backwards?
Could tell us Paul is dead.
Or it might tell us all we need to know.
Construct a makeshift flare out of this centrifuge here and this
Try speeding it up.
said, what's the
It sounds like some kind of phase inversion.
Well, then invert the phases.
That's what I'm doing. There.
Surrender, Earthlings. We are in charge. Surrender to the foreigners.
Oh, my.
Yes, indeed. Took the words right out of my mouth. Oh, my.
Who should we tell about this?
Who hasn't already been changed?
You and I.
But we might be the only two. I have a theory. We just found out that both you and I are basically only running on one cylinder.
Therefore, the subliminal messages require both hemispheres to be effective.
Precisely. We may be the only two we can trust, Dr. Freiberg.
Call me Julie.
The world's in big trouble, Julie.
I know, Dr. Science.
Call me Doctor.
And in other news, the First Family has put together its first album, Everything is Beautiful, with the President on drums and the First Lady on lead guitar. They're recording under the name Smile, and their logo is the smile face, which is also, due to presidential edict, the new official seal of the nation. I think that's really nice.
Every day in every way, things are getting better and better. When Julie gets back, she's going to be really surprised.
I think we should just stay put right here until we come up with a plan of action. Oh, hi, Denny.
Surprise!
Is this normal operating procedure?
Denny, what is this?
Just my way of saying whoopee.
Some way to make whoopee.
Denny, I want you to put your clothes on right now.
Yes, ma'am.
And I want these balloons taken down and that colored liquid
That's
taken
Kool-Aid.
out of the barrettes.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, some kids came by to see ya.
Which kids?
Just some kids from the neighborhood. They were real upbeat people, lots of energy and enthusiasm. I told them you'd be back any minute.
That's probably them now.
Greetings, citizens. And how is everything today, neighbor?
Can I help you?
Are you happy?
Yes.
How happy?
Reasonably happy.
Yay! Come with us. We want to make sure everyone's happy.
Thank you, but I can't. I'm busy.
We'll wait till you're not so busy.
Look, Julie, they have wagons full of people they're taking somewhere.
Unhappy people. People with no pep.
I thought Dr. Freiberg told you to put your clothes back on, Denny. Don't worry, I'll handle this.
No.
I am happy. Thank you, brothers.
Are you sure?
Why, sure I'm sure.
He's not sure.
I'm happy as a clam.
Clams aren't happy. See if he can sing a happy song. Michael rowed the boat ashore. Hallelujah. Michael rowed the boat ashore. Hallelujah. He's not singing.
I can't stomach this garbage.
Oh, I told you not to sing.
Caesar, take it.
Don't worry, I'll get out of this.
It was nice knowing you. Do I still have to put my clothes back on?
While the nation sleeps in a subliminal stupor, the master of arrogance himself is led into a cold dungeon. His only hope, a colleague whom he barely knows. Yet some strange chemistry seems to exist between Doctors Science and Freiberg. Will this partnership gel before life as we know it ends? Let's find out.
What's the use? There's no way I can break these chains.
No way indeed, Dr. Science.
Who are you? So dark I can't see.
I am one who knows as well as you do that iridium-chromium alloy is unsurpassed in tensile strength. No, you cannot break it with your arms, nor with a hacksaw, nor with a diamond for that matter.
So you took Chemistry 101. Who are you?
I am Uftwar Billoblada, Imperator of the true sentient beings, the ones who you so stupidly refer to as sea monkeys.
Let me light a match here. You are a sea monkey.
I am king of the sea monkeys, and we are not monkeys. We don't even resemble monkeys. Technically, we're a brine shrimp. Whoever came up with this sea monkey thing ought to be shot, and he will, as soon as our domination is complete.
So you're the ones who sent the CDs?
That is correct. I even sang lead on the first cut. Have a nice day.
Oh yeah, I remember. No!
That was Enjoy, the second cut. The true sentient being who sang on that was a talentless fool. I sang on the wind and went...
Whatever.
I have not brought you here to discuss your musical appreciation skills.
Good, because I'm into Bach in a big way. There's nothing much you can say that hasn't already been said. Have you read Schweitzer's book on...
Silence! I have brought you here to mate with Androsophala, Hooby-Jooby, Quang Quang Hua, Noop, the queen mother of us all. To you, she will appear as a green blob the size of a jumbo jet. But to we, true sentient beings, she is beautiful.
But why me?
You are the only human we have found who can successfully mate with Androsophala, Hooby-Jooby, Quang Quang Hua,
Nope.
You know her?
Not yet.
Your seed will be magnified 1,000,000 times in her body, and she will give birth to 100 million offspring, with the body of a human, but the mind of a true sentient being.
So you want me for my body?
No, but your extreme left brain development makes you the only human suitable. Your chromosome map zigs where ours zags. A perfect fit.
And just when's all this gonna happen?
The hour is later than you think, Dr. Science.
Meanwhile, back at Dr. Freiberg's laboratory.
Denny, would you bring me that jar of renal derivative? Denny,
Did you say something?
take those headphones off this instant.
Sorry.
Denny, I need your help. Dr. Science is in terrible danger. We've got to save him.
What'd he ever do for us?
Nothing. But he's one of the greatest intellects this world has ever known. He's completely uncompromising, totally honest, and unsparing in his criticism of shoddy research technique.
My, when's the big day?
I'm not in love with him, if that's what you're thinking.
Of course not.
I just admire and respect him, and I want to help him gain his freedom.
From who?
From whoever sent those discs and is behind those gangs of insufferably enthusiastic kids.
Oh, you mean those ones?
Oh, no. Here they come again.
Are you the scientist, lady?
Yes, I'm a scientist and a lady.
Where's your friend? The one with the beard.
I don't know. Where did you take him?
Why? Do you want to go there too?
Yes, I do.
You can't. You're too happy.
I'm not happy. I'm gloomy and mean and contemptuous. And I believe that everyone should be free to feel or think the way they want to. And that the foreigners are a terrible group.
That doesn't, sister. You're coming with us. Seize her.
Oh, she didn't mean any of this. She's just running some kind of fever. Let her go.
Don't worry, Denny. I'll be all right.
Goodbye, Julie. I'll miss you. Nobody's here. I can take my clothes off. Whoopee!
Beautiful dreamer, hark unto me. Sunlight and dewdrops are waiting for thee. Sounds of the rude world heard in the day. Now like the dewdrops have all passed away. Julie?
Dr. Science?
So they got you too, huh?
I sort of volunteered. Is it always this dark in here?
Yeah, unless I turn on the light. Switch is right over there, but no, I like to sit in the dark. It's the appropriate atmosphere for a sea monkey prison.
You mean sea monkey as in brine shrimp?
Yeah, just like the ads in the comic book said. They're delightfully wacky and goofy. And they're powerful. They're the ones behind the subliminal discs.
Why did they bring you here?
I know this is going to sound like a fantasy from a men's magazine, but they want me to mate with the sea monkey queen. Unfortunately, she's a green blob the size of a jumbo jet.
And then what?
They didn't say. I imagine then she bites my head off. They take over the Earth. You know, the standard outcome.
We'll figure something out. Don't worry. Between my right brain and your left.
So, I see you have company. Excellent. It's a terrible thing to bear such trials alone.
Who is he?
He's Uftwar Billowblather, the imperator of the true...
I'm Uftwar Billowblather, imperator of the true sentient beings. I have come to give you the greatest gift of all. Ourselves!
Look at you. You're absolutely hideous.
I assure you, madam, my reaction to your appearance is no more favorable. I will go now and leave you to spend these final moments alone.
How are we going to get out of here?
And what are we going to do once we get out?
We'll fight fire with fire, of course.
Yeah, but how are we going to make that horse drink once we've let it to water?
We'll record our own subliminal hit song. Only the message will be, life is often complicated. Think for yourself, and it's okay to be unhappy sometimes.
Great idea!
Okay, we've got a plan. Now, how do we get out of here? We haven't much time.
Have you ever heard of a Lissajous pattern?
Of course. The signal on one axis.
And the out-of-phase component on the other? Yeah. It's simple on an oscilloscope, but what if we could work backwards and form such a complex three-dimensional figure in space? I know it's a long shot, but it's the only shot we have. Call me crazy, but that's...
Lay off the science fiction talk, okay?
Okay, sorry. It's something I picked up in the 50s. Anyway, we form a complex three-dimensional pattern, and then we rotate it in space. Hopefully, this will generate two phantom components which exist elsewhere in space, namely us, outside of here. What do you say we give it a whirl, huh?
Can't work.
That's the attitude. I want you to hum this note. Okay, hold that note while I try to hit the same note, but out of phase by 90 degrees. Yeah, keep it up. It's okay to breathe.
Thank you.
What's going on here? You're chanting to your gods? The special effects are wonderful! I can almost see cracks in the walls. Oh! Stop! My palace! My palace is falling! Ah!
Where are we?
It looks like we're just down the block from a major recording studio. Good, D-sharp was the right note after all. Hurry, Julie. We've got to get inside that studio and record a subliminal compact disc that'll capture the fancy of America.
That's a tall order.
After what we've been through, it'll be child's play.
This is Brownstein's Furniture Spot. Take 37. Rolling.
Excuse me, I need this facility in the name of national security.
We'll give it right back.
Are you from the Announcers Union?
Yes. Are you union talent?
Yes, but this is a waiver type situation.
Not anymore. You're out of here.
But we're almost done.
Out, or I'll pull your union card and you'll never work again.
But I'm performing under an assumed
Save it for
name.
someone who cares. Out!
Who wants to go first?
I'll sing, you do the subliminals. Can you hear me in there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Put me on one track, her on the other, and record this directly to compact disc.
That's $3,000 an hour.
We'll run a tab.
Ready when you are.
A 1, a 2, a 3. Little boy, little girl.
Stand up for yourself.
Sad puppy dogs with a red bouquet.
Think for yourself.
Tucked away for a rainy day.
Sure, you'll have problems, but that's normal.
It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
And here's a new one by that new duo, The Doctors, and their single that's taken off like a bullet.
Here's that CD single, #1 for 9 weeks in a row by the Doctors.
Americans have grown more irritable lately, but also seem to once again hold individual opinions, something that had been on the decline in recent months.
And so, in my capacity as President of the United States, I award to you, Dr. Sinus and Dr. Freebird, the Medal of Honor, as well as a Grammy for Best Single of the Year. On behalf of the American people, thank you.
Don't mention it, Your Holiness.
You're welcome, Mr. President.
And now that the nation has been saved from a threat so insidious we didn't even know we were in danger, Doctors Science and Freiberg can resume business as usual. Back in his underground laboratory, the Fortress of Arrogance, Dr. Science and his loyal research assistant Rodney are doing just that. Boy, Dr. Science, I thought I'd never see you again.
And how did that make you feel, Rodney?
Do you want the truth?
Of course I do. A scientist is only interested in the truth.
Well, I had mixed feelings, to tell the truth.
And, well, you should have, Rodney. Remember, feelings are not facts. They're as changeable as the wind, as mixed as mud, and ultimately as useless as cheap shoes.
I'm sorry I've been so irritable lately. I don't know what's come over me. Maybe I have a lot of buried anger.
Sure you do. All humans have it. Relax, Rodney. It's normal. Oh, Dr. Freiberg, what brings you here?
Oh, I just thought I'd visit the co-winner of every popular music award given this year.
Yeah, too bad they didn't give us credit for saving the world from the sea monkeys.
Say, would you consider another joint project?
It depends on the project.
How about dinner at my lab after work? I've got lots of water there.
I'll go.
I'm sorry, Julie, but I couldn't. I'm already married.
Oh, I didn't know.
I'm not married.
Yes, science is my bride. And the children she bore me are named Hope, Progress, and that nagging feeling. No, Julie, I've tried to include others in my life, and believe me, it just doesn't work.
I believe you. Forget I asked.
I'm not an easy man to live with. Ask any of my ex-wives.
I believe you already. Well, just thought I'd stop by and say hello. So, hello. Now I'll say goodbye.
Goodbye, Julie.
Say, Dr. Science, what happened when I was on my sabbatical?
Not much, really. The world continued on just as it always has, with a few minor exceptions. Have you ever heard of a sea monkey?
Those things they sold in comic books? I had some once, but they all died.
Like I said, Rodney, things went along pretty much as before, only more so.
Da-da-da-da-da-da.